I don't even know where to begin. Maybe I'll start with the moment that should have been a red flag. The moment everything shifted, even though I didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a quiet, small moment. A glance, a smile, an offhand comment. That left a mark. I had no intention of checking her phone. Really, I didn't. I was never the kind of guy to snoop. Hell, I've always been the type to trust people, to trust my wife, without question. But there was something about that night, something that kept gnawing at me. And in the end, I couldn't let it go. It started with the party. She went out with her friends, a little get-together for a work event. I didn't mind. I was never a fan of those kinds of social gatherings. Too much small talk, too much pretending to care about things I couldn't be bothered with. So, I stayed home, content with my quiet evening. No harm in that, right? I had just finished dinner when she texted. Nothing out of the ordinary. A simple message saying she was having fun, enjoying herself, and how much she missed me. That was the last message I received from her for the next few hours. It wasn't that unusual. She was probably caught up with her friends. I didn't think anything of it. Then came the photo. I had just settled into the couch when my phone buzzed. It was her, a text with a picture attached. I opened it without thinking much about it. It was a picture of her at the party, standing with a guy I didn't recognize. They were both laughing, their faces close together, his arm around her waist. The first thought that popped into my head wasn't jealousy, it was curiosity. Who was this guy? She didn't mention anyone like him. I let it go. For the next hour, I just watched TV, trying not to think too much about it. But the more I replayed that image in my head, the more I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. It wasn't the photo itself. It was the way she looked in it. There was something in her eyes, something that wasn't there when she sent me that earlier text. Something playful. A little too playful for a married woman, in my opinion. So, I did what anyone in my position would do. I waited. And when the party ended and she finally came home, I tried to act normal. "Hey babe, how was it?" I asked, sitting on the couch. She smiled, a little too brightly. "It was great. Had such a good time." Her eyes flickered to the door, then back at me. Something was off. She seemed nervous, almost. "Did you see anyone interesting?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated for a moment. "Yeah, a few people from work. Just some old friends from before the office merger." I nodded, pretending to buy the excuse. But there was something about her voice that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. It was like she was trying to sell me something that wasn't real. I didn't say anything else. I didn't want to seem too suspicious. But then, I couldn't stop thinking about that picture. That night, after she went to bed, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the nagging feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. What was going on? Why was she acting so strange? I don't know how long I laid there, but eventually, I got up. I couldn't help myself. I grabbed her phone from the bedside table. It was unlocked, as usual. She never had a passcode. I knew I shouldn't, but at that point, I had to know. I opened her messages. There were the usual exchanges with friends and family. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then I came across a conversation that stopped me dead in my tracks. It was with David, the guy from the picture. I had no idea who David was before that moment. But as I read their conversation, my heart started to sink. The first few messages were friendly enough. But then, things started to shift. Slowly at first. There were comments about how fun it was to see each other again, how they'd missed hanging out. My throat tightened as I kept scrolling. Then came the more personal messages, jokes that only two people who knew each other well would share, teasing each other about things that didn't make sense unless they were close. And then, a message that hit me like a punch to the gut. David had texted her late into the night. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so hot, I could hardly keep my hands to myself." I froze. There was no mistake about it now. This wasn't some innocent interaction. She had crossed a line. And I wasn't blind. I knew exactly what was going on. The next message was a bit more subtle, but just as telling. She replied, "I'm glad we have that kind of connection. I don't feel like this with anyone else." It took every ounce of self-control to keep my hands from shaking as I read that. The worst part? She had sent me that photo. The one I thought was just a funny, casual thing. But it was more than that, wasn't it? It was a way of pretending everything was normal while she was keeping something from me. She had sent me that image, knowing full well what was really going on. I didn't know what to do. I was angry, but also deeply hurt. I could feel the weight of betrayal pressing on me, suffocating me. I couldn't just let it slide. So, I did something I didn't think I'd ever do. The next morning, as she was getting ready to leave for work, I stood up and said, "We need to talk." She looked at me, a little confused, but said nothing. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. "Is there something you want to explain?" I asked, my voice steady, even though my insides were churning. Her face went pale. She tried to smile, but it was weak, unconvincing. "Duncan, it's not what you think." But I wasn't listening anymore. I couldn't. And that's when I decided to show everyone. I didn't care about appearances anymore. If she wasn't going to be honest with me, if she wasn't going to respect our marriage, then maybe everyone else needed to know what was really going on. I shared the messages with her friends. I showed them to her family. I even shared it with some of her coworkers who had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. And you know what? The moment I did that, the moment I let everyone see her betrayal, it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. She was furious, of course, but it didn't matter. Because in the end, I was the one who had control. Not her, not David. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I should have known better than to trust my gut, but I didn't. I ignored the tiny voice inside me that told me to dig deeper, to question things. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just being paranoid, reading too much into a harmless picture and a few late-night texts. After all, Camilla had always been open with me, never secretive, never hiding anything. But something had changed. I could feel it in the air, like a crack in the foundation of something I thought was solid. The next few days were strange. Camilla went back to work, and we didn't talk much about what had happened at the party. She seemed distant, like she was trying to act normal, but there was something forced about it. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes. Her words were more clipped than usual. And every time I looked at her, I couldn't shake the thought of that photo, the one with her and David, laughing, touching, so damn close. I kept telling myself to relax. It was probably nothing. But then, I noticed the subtle things, the way she'd check her phone every time it buzzed, the quick glances when she thought I wasn't looking. Little things, but enough to make me uneasy. I didn't want to confront her yet. I wasn't ready. I wasn't sure how to handle it. So I stayed quiet, pretending everything was fine, pretending I didn't see what I saw. But my mind was spinning. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't just sit back and let this eat away at me. One night, about a week after the party, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. The conversation with David was still fresh in my mind. I couldn't get it out of my head. What had really happened at that party? Was there something going on between them? The thought gnawed at me. Then it happened. My phone buzzed. A notification from an app one had never heard of before. It was a photo-sharing app. I opened it, and there it was. Another picture, this time of Camilla and David at the party, but it wasn't just any picture. It was a selfie, and they were close, too close. In the photo, Camilla was laughing, her head resting on David's shoulder. His arm was around her, pulling her in tightly. The caption read, "Can't stop smiling when I'm with you." Red heart. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't need to see more. I could feel my face flush with anger, with betrayal. I knew what I had to do. I stood up, my hands shaking, and walked into the living room where Camilla was watching TV. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it was impossible. "Camilla, who's David?" She looked up, a little surprised. "David? From work, babe. You know him." I nodded, not even sure how to react. I didn't want to seem like I was accusing her outright, but the doubt was suffocating me. "And what's with the pictures? What's going on between you two?" She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Duncan, it's nothing. Just some friendly photos from the party." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Friendly? Was she serious? Friendly. I repeated, my voice rising without meaning to. "You've never taken photos like that with me." Camilla looked caught off guard. She tried to laugh it off, but it didn't feel genuine. "It's really nothing. Just a joke between friends." I stood there for a moment, my mind racing. I wanted to believe her. I did. But the evidence, those texts, the photo, was right in front of me. I took a deep breath. "I'm not stupid, Camilla. I saw the texts. I saw what you said to him." Her face went pale. "Duncan, don't." I cut her off. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I want the truth." For a long time, she just stared at me, her eyes wide. I could see the panic in them, the realization that she couldn't talk her way out of this. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but I knew I wasn't going to get an easy answer. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what you want me to say." That was it. That moment. The one where I realized everything I had believed in, everything I thought was true about us, was a lie. I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Sadness? All of it, probably. But there was also something else, something more unexpected. A sense of relief. It was like I had finally opened my eyes to what was really going on, and while it hurt, it also felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I didn't want to let her off easy. I didn't want to just pretend it was all okay. So I did what I thought I had to do next. I grabbed my phone and opened up the conversation I had saved, those messages between her and David. I didn't care anymore about the consequences. I didn't care if she'd be mad at me. I was done with the lies. I showed her everything. The texts, the photos, the words they had exchanged late at night. "You think this is nothing? You think I'm just supposed to sit here and pretend everything's fine?" Her face twisted in a mixture of guilt and shame, but still, she said nothing. I stood there, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with something else, something stronger. "I'm done pretending, Camilla. If you're going to do this, fine. But don't think I'm going to sit in the dark while you lie to me." And then, without thinking, I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I showed everyone. I sent the messages. I sent the photos. To her friends, to her coworkers, to her family. I needed them to see the truth. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I'm not sure what I expected. Maybe I thought she'd break down and beg for forgiveness. Maybe I thought she'd fight back. But in the end, it didn't matter. Because I was done. The next few hours were a blur. I don't even know how I managed to keep my hands from shaking as I hit send on the message. But once I did, there was no going back. At first, it didn't hit me how far I had gone until I saw her face when the messages went out. Camilla's expression morphed from one of disbelief to pure panic. Her eyes widened, her lips parted, but she couldn't form words. I stood there, phone in hand, waiting for her to react. But she didn't. She just stared at the screen like it was a bad dream. Like maybe if she stared long enough, the words wouldn't be real. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she opened her mouth. "Duncan, what the hell is wrong with you?" Her voice shook, and there was that familiar defensive tone I had heard so many times before when things got uncomfortable. But this time, I didn't flinch. This time, I didn't let her talk her way out of it. "I'm wrong. Camilla, you are the one who crossed the line, and I'm done pretending I didn't see it." She tried to move toward me, but I took a step back, my eyes never leaving hers. "Don't come any closer." It felt like the air had thickened, suffocating me. All the anger and betrayal that I'd kept bottled up for so long was now spilling out. I didn't care about the consequences anymore. "You're really going to do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You're going to ruin everything for this?" Everything. She was the one who ruined everything. Not me. "I'm not ruining anything, Camilla. You did that when you started sending flirty messages to David. You did that when you lied to me." Her face crumpled for a moment, and I saw a flicker of guilt pass through her eyes. For the briefest second, I almost thought she might apologize. But she didn't. Instead, she took a shaky breath and said, "You don't understand, Duncan. It's not what you think." I almost laughed. This again? How many times had I heard that line before? How many times had she used it to get out of trouble? "I think I understand just fine," I said. "I saw everything I needed to see. And it's over." Her shoulders slumped as if the weight of everything was finally crashing down on her. She looked like a woman who had just realized that her carefully constructed lies weren't enough to keep her from facing the consequences. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. Camilla turned to leave, her steps slow and hesitant. But just as she reached the door, she stopped. She didn't look back, but I could hear her voice, strained, coming through the air. "You'll regret this, Duncan. You're making a huge mistake." But I didn't regret it. Not for 1 second. I was done being the guy who let things slide. Done being the one who accepted excuses and lies. Maybe it wasn't the most mature thing to do, but at that moment, showing the world the truth felt like the only thing I could do. I didn't hear from her for hours after that. I sat in the living room, watching the notifications pile up on my phone. Messages from her friends, her coworkers, even her family, all asking the same thing. What was going on? At first, I didn't respond. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. But then, after a while, I realized that maybe I should, just to make sure the truth didn't get twisted. So, I started replying. One by one, I told them the same thing. I showed them the messages, the photos, the lies. And as each person reacted, some with shock, others with anger, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the weight of suspicion. The burden of doubt had been lifted, and now the truth was out there for everyone to see. But then came the worst part: her call. My phone rang late that night, and when I saw her name on the screen, I hesitated. I wasn't sure what she would say. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. But I answered. "Duncan," she said, her voice small and shaky. "You really did this. You really exposed me." Her words hit harder than I expected. The reality of what had just happened was starting to sink in. I wasn't just hurting her. I was hurting myself too. But I couldn't back down now. "I didn't expose you, Camilla," I said quietly. "You exposed yourself." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the sound of her trying to collect herself. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I don't know what happened. I was stupid. I never meant to hurt you." I didn't know how to respond. The apology felt hollow, like it was too little, too late. "Camilla," I said, taking a deep breath, "I can't keep doing this. You've lied to me. You've betrayed me. And I'm done." I could feel my heart beating in my chest. This was it. The end. She didn't say anything after that. The line went quiet for a long time. And then, I heard the sound of her hanging up. And that was the last time I spoke to her. The silence that followed was almost suffocating. After Camilla hung up, I sat there, holding my phone in my hand, staring at the screen. The reality of everything that had happened began to hit me like a wave, and for a second, I was paralyzed. I had spent so much time keeping everything bottled up inside, but now that it was all out in the open, I didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, sadness, they all mixed together, a cocktail of emotions I couldn't quite process. I went to bed that night, not really sleeping, just lying there in the dark. My mind kept racing, playing over the conversation I'd had with Camilla, the texts, the photos. It was all so surreal. By the time morning came, I was exhausted but determined. I knew there was no going back. The truth was out, and I had to live with the consequences. What I didn't expect, though, was how quickly everything would spiral. When I checked my phone the next morning, I had dozens of messages. Camilla's friends, her coworkers, even some of my own friends, all reaching out, some confused, some angry, others just lost. They didn't know what to believe. But what was worse was that Camilla had already started her campaign to turn everyone against me. "She's lying," Camilla told her friends. "I never meant to hurt him. You have to believe me." I could already hear the manipulation in her words. She was trying to paint herself as the victim, trying to make it look like I was the one who had blown everything out of proportion. She even sent me a message in the early hours, a last-ditch attempt to make me second-guess myself. "I'm sorry," it said. "I really am. Can we talk?" But I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing left to say. The hardest part came when her family got involved. Her mother, who had always treated me like a son, called me. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Duncan, what happened? What did you do?" That question, "What did you do?" It haunted me, as if everything was somehow my fault. I couldn't stomach it. "I didn't do anything," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Camilla made her choices. She betrayed me, and I'm not going to pretend I didn't see it." There was silence on the other end of the line. "But you didn't have to expose her like that. This is going to ruin everything." My heart broke in that moment. It wasn't just Camilla I was losing. It was the relationships, the trust, the future I had thought we would have. All of it, gone in an instant. Still, I stood my ground. I didn't ruin anything. She did. The days that followed felt like a blur. Every conversation, every message, every phone call left me feeling like I was walking through a fog. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, about how everything had crumbled so quickly. But even as the storm raged around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. I didn't have to keep pretending. I didn't have to keep lying to myself. The truth was out, and it hurt like hell, but it was also a relief. As the weeks went by, I started to rebuild. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast, but I took small steps. I reached out to my friends, to the people who had stuck by me. I found solace in their support, and slowly, I began to realize that I could survive this. I didn't need Camilla to be happy. I wasn't sure if I would ever trust again, but I knew one thing for sure: I would never again let someone make me feel small. I wasn't going to let her take any more of my peace. The last message I received from Camilla came about a month after everything blew up. It was simple: "I'm sorry. I hope you find happiness." It felt like a goodbye, but it didn't feel like closure. I deleted it without replying. In the end, it wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the realization that I had ignored the signs for so long. I had let myself believe in something that wasn't real. But I wasn't going to make that mistake again. And as painful as it was, I knew I had made the right choice. The next few weeks were a strange mix of isolation and reflection. The life I had known, my home, my routine, felt like it had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. I kept telling myself it would get easier, that time would heal the wound, but the pain of betrayal didn't just fade. It lingered, like an open wound that wouldn't scab over. Camilla was everywhere. Her absence was more noticeable than her presence had ever been. Every corner of the house reminded me of her. Her books, her favorite coffee mug on the kitchen counter, the scent of her perfume that still clung to the sheets. It wasn't just the tangible things, it was the memories. The quiet mornings when we used to talk about everything and nothing at once, the way she used to smile when I walked into the room. All of it felt like a distant dream now. But the hardest part? The hardest part was the constant reminder that I had been blind. I had let things slide. I had ignored the signs. I had seen the way she looked at David, the way she laughed at his jokes, but I told myself it was nothing. I convinced myself that I was just being paranoid, that my insecurities were clouding my judgment. That was the part that hurt the most, the realization that I had known, deep down, something wasn't right, and I had done nothing about it. A month passed since the last time I spoke to Camilla, and I thought I was getting better. I had filled my days with work, trying to distract myself from the constant ache in my chest. But then came the day that would change everything. It was a Saturday morning when I got the message. I had just finished making coffee when my phone buzzed. It was from one of Camilla's close friends, a woman named Jess who I'd always liked. Jess had always been kind to me, and we'd shared a few good laughs over the years. But when I saw her name, a pit instantly formed in my stomach. The message was short: "We need to talk. It's about Camilla." I stared at the screen for a long moment, the words sinking in. Why would Jess reach out to me after everything that happened? Was she trying to guilt me into forgiving Camilla? Or was there something else she wanted to tell me? Against my better judgment, I responded, "What's going on?" The reply came almost immediately. "It's important, Duncan. Please, call me." I didn't want to, but something in the tone of her message made my blood run cold. I needed to know what this was about. So I called her. When Jess answered, there was an unusual tightness in her voice. "Duncan, I'm sorry to reach out like this, but I need to tell you something. Something about Camilla." I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. My heart was pounding in my chest. Was this it? Was she going to admit to some other part of the betrayal I hadn't seen? "It's been eating at me," Jess said. "I don't know how to say this, but I think you should know the truth. Camilla wasn't just talking to David. She was seeing him behind your back. Not just at the party, but for months." The words hit me like a slap in the face. My mind raced, trying to process what Jess was saying. How long had this been going on? How much had I missed? "I didn't want to be the one to tell you this," Jess continued, her voice trembling. "But I feel like you need to know. She was planning to leave you. It wasn't just an affair, Duncan. It was a full-on relationship." I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, unable to move. The air felt thick, and my thoughts were clouded with disbelief. A full-on relationship? For months? "How did you know?" I managed to croak, my voice barely a whisper. "I overheard her talking to David one night," Jess said. "They were making plans, talking about getting away together. I never thought she'd actually do it, but I couldn't stay quiet anymore. You deserve to know the truth." I didn't know what to say. I was numb, my hands trembling as I gripped the phone tighter. All the pieces started to fall into place. The distance, the secrecy, the late nights, the laughter. It had all been leading to this moment, and I had been too blind to see it. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, trying to make sense of everything. "Why keep this from me?" "I didn't know what to do," Jess replied. "I didn't want to be the one to break your heart. But you deserve better, Duncan. You deserve someone who respects you." The anger started to build up, not just toward Camilla, but toward myself for being so oblivious. I felt like a fool. "Thank you for telling me," I said, my voice barely audible. I need to process this." "I'm really sorry, Duncan," Jess said softly before hanging up. I stood there in the kitchen, trying to make sense of the chaos in my head. Every second felt like an eternity as I replayed everything Jess had told me. Camilla had been planning this all along. She hadn't just messed up once. This had been a full betrayal, a premeditated affair. I was furious. But more than that, I was devastated. The person I had trusted more than anyone in the world had been lying to me the entire time. I knew I had to confront her again. But this time, there would be no more pretending. No more lies. It was over. I could feel the anger boiling inside me as I paced back and forth. I had been deceived for months, and now the full extent of the betrayal was clear. Camilla hadn't just flirted with David at the party. She had been hiding a full-on affair from me, all while pretending everything was fine. The more I thought about it, the more disgusted I became. How could I have been so blind? How could I not see what was right in front of me? I knew I needed to confront her, but the question was, how? Part of me wanted to scream at her, to accuse her of everything I had just learned. Another part of me wanted to stay calm, to get to the truth without losing control. I wasn't sure which version of myself would show up, but I knew I couldn't let this go. Camilla was at work when I made the decision. I had already told her I was going to be home, and that I needed to talk to her. I wasn't sure if she would be relieved to finally face me, or if she'd try to find a way to avoid the conversation. Either way, I wasn't going to let this slip through my fingers. Not now. She walked in through the front door around 5 p.m., her face tired, eyes red as if she hadn't slept properly in days. She was acting like nothing had changed. She dropped her purse on the table and gave me a weak smile. "Hey, Duncan. How was your day?" It felt like a slap in the face. How could she be so casual? How could she act like we were just going to go back to normal? "We need to talk," I said, my voice tight. "Now?" She froze for a moment, the smile fading from her face. She knew what was coming. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it was masked by something else, a defensive wall she was trying to put up. "I know, Duncan. I know we have some things to sort out." Her voice was shaky. "Can we just sit down, please?" I didn't sit down. I couldn't. I was too wound up, too angry, too hurt. Instead, I stood there, staring at her as I spoke. "No, Camilla. We don't need to sit down. I need answers. You've been lying to me for months, and I need to know why." Her face tightened, and I saw a flash of panic in her eyes. She took a step forward, as if to close the space between us, but I stepped back, not wanting her anywhere near me. "Duncan, please," she whispered. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. I thought I could control it." "Control it?" I echoed, my voice rising. "How long were you planning to keep this up? How many times did you look me in the eye and lie to me? You were seeing David. For months. How long did you think I wouldn't find out?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She was fumbling, searching for something to say, but nothing made it past her lips. I could see the panic now, the fear of being caught in the web of her own lies. It was no longer about saving our relationship. It was about salvaging her pride. "I didn't want to hurt you," she finally said, her voice breaking. I thought I could keep it separate. But then it got too complicated. I didn't know what to do." I shook my head, disbelief flooding through me. "You didn't know what to do? You were sleeping with another man. Camilla, how could you even say that to me with a straight face?" Her eyes darted away from mine, unable to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen like this." The apology was meaningless now. The damage had already been done. "I found out everything, Camilla. I know about the plans. The things you said to him. The lies you told me." I pulled out my phone, holding it in front of her face. "I have the proof, and you can't talk your way out of this anymore." She looked down, her hands trembling as she grabbed the edge of the table for support. "Please, Duncan. Please don't. Don't do this." I didn't hesitate. I showed her the texts, the photos, everything. Every lie she had told, every secret she had tried to keep hidden, was right there in front of her. There was no escaping it now. "This is who you really are," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "A liar. A cheater. Someone who didn't have the decency to respect our relationship." Her face twisted in shame, but there was something else in her eyes too. Guilt, yes, but also a flicker of anger. She wasn't ready to face what she had done. She was still trying to justify her actions in her own mind. "I never meant for you to find out this way," she whispered. "But it's not like you've been perfect either. I was trying to make things work, but you were never around. You were always too busy, too focused on yourself." Her words felt like a slap. Are you seriously trying to blame me for this? Are you telling me that my work was the reason you slept with someone else? She didn't answer, and I didn't wait for her to. I couldn't bear to hear another excuse. I didn't want to hear her rationalize her actions anymore. I wanted the truth, and now I had it. You're right about one thing, though, I said, my voice low and steady. I wasn't around. But that's because I was busy building the life we were supposed to have. I was working for our future. You, on the other hand, were too busy building a future with someone else. She recoiled at the words, her face pale. I saw the tears welling up in her eyes, but I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. I think we're done here, I said, turning away from her. The anger was still there, but now, it was mingled with a sense of finality. This was over. The lies, the secrets, the years I had wasted, gone. I didn't look back as I walked away. Not this time. The days after that confrontation felt like a blur. It was like I was walking through a fog, everything muted and distant. Camilla had left that night, just like she had planned. She packed her things in silence, not even looking at me as she walked out the door. I couldn't say I was surprised. I had known it was coming for a while now. But still, when the door closed behind her, I felt a weight settle in my chest. It was done. She was gone, and I was alone. The house felt too quiet. Her absence echoed in every room. I couldn't escape the constant reminder of everything we had built together. The arguments, the memories, the small moments that had once seemed so ordinary. Now they felt like lies. But as the hours passed, something began to shift inside me. At first, it was the anger, the burning need to make her understand how much she had hurt me. But slowly, that faded. I didn't need her to understand. I didn't need her to apologize. She had made her choice. What I needed now was closure. The next morning, I woke up early, the weight of the past few weeks still heavy on my shoulders. I went for a run, something I hadn't done in months. The air was cold, the streets empty, and for a few minutes, I could just focus on the rhythm of my steps. When I returned, there was a message waiting for me. It was from her. I'm sorry, Duncan. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could fix things, but I see now that I've ruined everything. Please, let's talk. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room. What could she possibly say now that would change anything? But another part of me was tempted. Maybe I wanted to hear her try to explain herself one last time. Maybe I wanted to hear her say the words I had been waiting for. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. I didn't respond. The days dragged on. I kept myself busy, working, catching up with old friends, trying to piece together the life that had felt so shattered just a few weeks before. Slowly, I started to feel lighter. I began to see the world through a different lens, one that wasn't clouded by lies or betrayal. It was strange, but liberating. Camilla never reached out again, and I didn't hear from her friends or her family. The messages and calls stopped coming. It was like the silence had become the final goodbye. One evening, I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through old photos on my phone, when I came across one from our last vacation together. We were smiling, standing on a beach, with the sun setting behind us. For a moment, it almost felt like nothing had changed. But then the reality set in. That was who we had been, before everything fell apart. Before the lies. I put the phone down, stood up, and walked outside. The cool air felt refreshing, like a reset button for my mind. I didn't want to dwell on the past anymore. I couldn't. I had made my choice. Camilla had made hers. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Months passed, and the wounds of betrayal slowly began to heal. The house that once felt so empty and cold began to feel like mine again. I focused on rebuilding my life, on myself. It wasn't easy, but with every day, the weight of Camilla's lies grew lighter. I found a new rhythm. I rekindled old friendships, found new hobbies, and for the first time in years, I began to feel like I was truly living for myself. Then, one afternoon, I received an unexpected message. It was from Jess, Camilla's friend. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I hesitated before opening it. I know it's been a while, but I thought you should know something. It started. I didn't want to get involved, but I just can't stay silent anymore. Camilla, she's been seeing David again. But this time, she's the one who's being played. I sat back in my chair, the words sinking in. My first instinct was to brush it off. After everything, I didn't care about her anymore. But as I read the rest of the message, a small part of me felt a cold satisfaction. Jess had gone on to explain that David had grown distant, that he'd begun seeing someone else, a woman he had been talking to behind Camilla's back. It seemed that karma had come around. After all, Camilla had done to me exactly what she had feared most. She had become the one being lied to, the one being cast aside. It was painful, but at the same time, it felt like the universe had a way of righting the wrongs. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her bed, and now she was lying in it. Days later, I ran into one of Camilla's old co-workers at a cafe. We exchanged a few pleasantries, but then she leaned in, lowering her voice. "Have you heard about Camilla?" I braced myself, already knowing what was coming. She went on to explain that after David had ended things with her, Camilla had become increasingly erratic. She was messaging people from her past, trying to reach out to old friends, begging for forgiveness, but no one was responding. Her reputation at work was in tatters, and people were starting to talk. As I listened, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. Camilla was reaping what she had sown. Another part of me, the one that had once loved her so deeply, couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. But that was fleeting. I had moved on, and I had learned an important lesson. Trust is everything. Once it's gone, nothing can bring it back. The final blow came when I learned from Jess that Camilla had been let go from her job. The company had found out about her affair with David. It wasn't just the affair that was damaging. It was the lies, the manipulation, the constant disruption she had caused at work. She was no longer the charming, dependable colleague they had once trusted. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. Camilla had destroyed everything for herself, and I had come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and more self-aware. I wasn't the same person who had once been blindsided by her lies. I wasn't the man who had spent sleepless nights trying to make sense of what happened. I had learned to let go, to trust myself, and to trust that life had a way of balancing the scales. I looked around my apartment, the place I had started to make my own. I smiled to myself. The truth was, I had a new beginning, and it was better than anything I had ever imagined. And as for Camilla, well, life had a way of teaching lessons, and sometimes, those lessons were learned the hard way. I didn't need to lift a finger for her to get what she deserved. As the months went on, I met someone new. Someone who didn't lie. Someone who made me feel seen, heard, and respected. And with her, I knew that I had finally found the kind of love that didn't come with secrets. The story had come full circle. Camilla's betrayal had been the hardest thing I had ever gone through, but it also had been the catalyst for my own transformation. I wasn't just moving on from her, I was moving up. And for the first time in a long time, I could honestly say, I was happy.